Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Spence Graham, WT8WV, and we're here for another NEMARC excursion on the internet since we can't meet in person quite yet. But we've got some good friends here with us already, and I'm sure there will be some more people as well popping in there. This evening, we're going to be talking about portable operations, specifically about parks on the air. And we have somebody amongst us that has been doing this since 2016 and has activated some parks and has worked a lot of parks. I do know, and I'm sure he'll get into that the N3FJP software that many of us use is now being retrofitted, I guess, for parks on the air. So at this time, we're going to talk to Bernie Wimmer, K4JDF. Bernie, tell us all about parks on the air.
What would you like to know? So let me get my, let me share my screen here. Okay, that's what I want to do. All right, and, oh, hang on. I used to do this all the time. There we go. All right, so portable operating, or POTA, which is parks on the air. And so how many people have done field day? All right, so you've done portable operating. My first field day was 30 years ago this June, and I was a new ham, and they took me out and they said, "Come on, meet us at the park." And next thing I know, we're setting up tents and throwing antennas in trees and stuff. So, what is portable operating? Well, operating from home. Normally, you don't have commercial power, and it's a great practice for emergency communications, which is what part of ham radio is supposed to be about. It's not so much it's a hobby, but it's also a public service. And who doesn't like the great outdoors, fighting the bugs and the mosquitoes and all that stuff? And for those of us who live in the urban areas, sometimes the parks can be very quiet, RFI wise. And it never fears that when you set up a radio and they hear the radio or they see an antenna, somebody will stop by and say, "What are you doing here?" That happened to me a couple times when I was camping in my campsite, and somebody came up and said, "What's going on here?" So it's a great way to share a hobby. So the really start of Parks on the Air was the ARRL at the National Parks on the Air. And that was 2016, sponsored by the ARRL and run by the league. And that was also the centennial for the National Park Service. So, and they teamed up with the Park Service, and they sent hands all over the country activating national parks, national monuments, and it was fun. We developed a really nice group of folks, and they activated places that, as an example, they activated a memorial that was a house, and the only way they could do it was to be on the front doorstep of the house and activated it. And of course, they had to get permission from the Park Service and do that. But that's where Parks on the Air came from. Once the National Parks on the Air ended, people didn't want it to end. So eventually we came up with Parks on the Air. And the biggest difference between National Parks on the Air and Parks on the Air, the National Parks on the Air was national parks only. Parks on the Air is all of the national parks that were included in the ARRL event, but state parks everywhere around the country and around the world. So that's the biggest difference between Parks on the Air and the 2016 National Parks on the Air. So during that event, I had the opportunity to activate 2 parks, and that was awesome. It was fun. I activated Acadia National Park in Maine, and there's a National Historic Site down in Towson, Maryland, and I activated that on the last day of the year, December 31st. So that was fun. So we all should be logging into Parks on the Air website. It's parksontheair.com. Really easy. You can just log on there. And if you did any activation, or if you did any hunting, catching, chasing from the ARL event, they're all been ported over. So as of today, I have 153 parks that I've listened to, 153 parks that I hunted out of 185 QSOs. So that's not bad. It's a good ratio. And so everybody, if you're interested at all in Parks on the Air, you should go to their website and log in. Takes but just a couple minutes, and then you can get a list of the parks. They also have a list of top activators, top hunters. If you notice here, there's a young lady, KB3 WAV. I don't know if you can see that or not, but she's had over 2,000 activations all time since January 1st, 2016 to today. So she's a crazy lady. Her and her husband are both activators. They live out in Westminster, Maryland. I think I've worked here 10 times. So this is a nice little chart here. If you're interested, if you're a contester and you're interested in how many cues you've got, you can go to this page here and look it up. They also have maps of entities of parks, and this is one for Maryland. And all the yellow dots are parks in Maryland that you can activate. One in Townsend, the one I was talking about, and there's 3 parks right here in Harford County. There's Rock State Park, Palmer State Park, and one right down the street from me, Susquehanna. There's a couple over in Cecil County. You can go up to the DX, you can go up to the map and you can do a drop down. So whatever state, like for Dan, whatever state you're in, you can do a drop down for Pennsylvania and you can see how many parks are in Pennsylvania. And there's lots of parks everywhere. So what do you need for POTA? Well, first of all, you need a radio, obviously. And any radio can be used because most of our radios are 12 volts. There are gazillions 7300s out there that people use for POTA. 891s. I mean, you name it, the radios are out there. Everybody's using it. Then you need a battery. Most of these parks don't have 110. You have to have a battery of some sort, and I'm going to talk to you about batteries later. And of course, you need an antenna. The fun part about POTA is antennas. I love doing antennas. And because you're doing 100 watts, and usually you want to be fast and light with your, so we use a lot of 26 gauge wire and RG 174 coax because we're not worried about long coax runs and so on. So the antennas is really fun. Most guys run no more than 100 watts. Usually they're running a lot less for battery life. And then there's logging. You have to log your contacts. If you activate a park, you have to send in your activation to Parks on the Air. If you're hunting, you don't have to do anything. It's done automatically. But if you activate a park, you have to send the log in. And really, there's 3 ways to do it. You can use a laptop with N3FJP software. There's a great YouTube video on modifying Scott's AC log to work for Parks on the Air. You can use a tablet like an iPad or your phone, and you'd be surprised how many people use paper and pen for logging. And there are programs out there that you can export. You can write down your loggings into a spreadsheet as an example, and then you put that into another program which converts it to the ADIF file, which is what you have to send in to Parks on the Air. So radio choices, as I said, just about any radio at home can be used portable. And there's really 2 different categories. QRP, which is 5 watts, CW, or 10 watt single sideband. And the advantage of using QRP is, well, less power. You don't have to take a big of a battery, less weight, obviously, and more of a challenge. Now, if you want to use QRO 100 watts, well, you have higher power requirements. Normally, it's more weight because you have to carry a bigger battery with you, but more power can be helpful to you if you're trying to, if conditions are bad. Sometimes the QRP people have a little bit of problem being heard because 10 watts isn't a whole lot. But you'd be surprised how many people are out there using QRP. And for you CW guys, there's a lot of CW parts on the air. So if you guys don't want to use your microphones, there's a lot of CW ops, especially on 30 meters. Lots of POTA on 30 meters. This is a quick chart that's put out by one of the battery companies. It just shows you your, for instance, here is the 7300 down here. Transmit in watts is 2 to 100 watts variable. 21 amps is what it draws on transmit at 100 watts. And then also important is your standby. How many amps does it draw on standby? 1.25 every on receive and 0.9 amps on standby. So if you take this chart and you can figure out how big a battery you need for a 7300. And here's the same company put out a duty cycle 50-50. This is from field day. So if you're running 100 watts and 5 watts receive, if you have a 30 amp hour battery, you can run for almost 7 hours, 50-50. Now, if you're activating in a park, you're going to be busy. You're going to be making, you're going to be probably doing more than that. It's like all of a sudden it's a pile up, but you're on the other end of a pile up. If you want to go for a full day, 9 hours, you're going to need a 40 amp hour battery. So that just gives you, now most activations don't last more than 3 or 4 hours. So you can probably get by safely with a 30 amp hour battery. But look what happens if you run 5 or 10 watts. The battery sizes go way down. You can run almost a 6 amp hour battery will run you all day if you run 10 watts. So there's the advantage of running QRP versus QRO. QRP, you have less battery capacity needed. So most of us are familiar with batteries. I think we've all lugged, I know Dan has, he said he has a whole bunch of lead acid deep cycle batteries. We've all used them over the years. It's all they had. They're heavy, but they work. And you know, they'll get you through a day. I mean, I used one at field day a few years ago. I had a trickle charging through a solar panel and it lasted us all day on deep cycle battery. The new kid on the block, well, new kid, 3 or 4 years, is a lithium ion phosphate battery. And they're much lighter. And I got a couple, here you go, lead acid battery, readily available. You can go to Walmart and buy a lead acid battery. They're affordable. You know, I haven't bought one for a while, but I'm sure Walmart probably $150 for a deep cycle battery. And they're durable. They're built to take a lot of abuse because people like Dan, they put them in their boat and they probably drop them into the boat and get their motor going and gets wet. So they're durable. However, they're heavy, relatively speaking, compared to the lithium batteries. Lead acids have a lot of energy to weight ratio. They have a, let me see here, let me do this. They have a shorter lifespan and cycle life, especially when they're deeply discharged. And this is something I knew, but I didn't know. Discharging deep cycle lead acid batteries below 20% and sometimes 50% permanently reduces the battery's capacity. So if you're out there in a park and you activate and you get going, and all of a sudden your battery's down to 50% or less, you may have permanently reduced that battery. And high current loads rapidly diminish rated capacity. Most deep cycle lead acid batteries are designed for slow, steady discharge over a 20-hour period. If the time frame is reduced, the capacity rating drops. If you take, for example, for a trolling battery, you know, for a battery used for trolling in the boat. That's what they're talking about here. Slow, steady discharge. The lithium battery, long lifespan, 5 to 10 years versus lead acid, depending on the depth of discharge. Here's the big one here, longer life cycle, 1,000 to 3,000 charge and discharge cycles compared to a similar life lead acid battery, maybe 200 to 1,000 cycles. They're less susceptible to problems caused by depth of discharge. These batteries can be dropped to 20% of charge without long-term damage. And they're lighter than lead acid batteries and very safe. Cons, well, they're a little more expensive, maybe a lot more expensive. They are susceptible to damage via overcharging. So if you have if you buy one of these new lithium batteries, don't use a regular charger on them. You have to use one that's designed for the lithium battery. And deep cycle batteries, these lithium batteries, are better than deep cycle lead acid batteries in just about every measurable way. That's what they say. And just to give you an example here, let me go here. Nothing like a good little bit of show and tell. So this is a 12 volt, 30 amp hour battery. It weighs 6 pounds. So can you, a battery this size for a lead acid, I couldn't be holding it up here like this. So this is a lot of the activators are using these batteries now. And you can get these things on, there's a big company called Biolino, which are selling these batteries. But you can go on Amazon now and you can also buy them. This one here is eco-worthy. And I think that was $150 for a 30 amp hour battery, which is going to run my 7300, you know, a couple days if I want it to last that long. So that's the beauty of these new batteries. Okay. Okay, yeah, let's go here. All right. One of my favorite things was antennas. And I know since we have a group here, antennas are very popular. Dipoles are very popular because in most cases, you don't have to worry about antenna tuners. Remember, we're looking for, a lot of times you might have to walk into a park. So the less stuff you have to carry with you, the better. So if you have a resonant antenna, that means you don't have to carry an antenna tuner with you. And link dipoles are very popular. There's a company called Soda Beams out of England, which makes link dipoles. And the most popular one, the one I have, is for 20 and 40 meters. And it's essentially a 40-meter dipole. And at the 16 feet of leg, there's a clip where you can disconnect the rest of the antenna. So you can just have a 20-meter dipole. If you want 40, you just go and reconnect it up and you have a 40-meter dipole. Very popular, the link dipoles from Soda Beams. And there's lots of companies are making them. Non-resonant wires. I'm glad Scott's not here to hear me talk about non-resonant wires. Usually use a 9-to-1 or a 4-to-1 balun. And usually if you use this, tuners are usually needed. The advantage of this is if you're in a park, you don't have room for your traditional dipole. So you can just throw up any amount of wire you want, connect it to the 9-to-1 or 4-to-1 balun, put a tuner on it, and you can get on the air. Another item is ham sticks. I use the Hustler antennas with the resonators on them. And this is how I activated my 2 parks. Because when you're in a parking lot, usually there's not a whole lot of room for you to put up a dipole. So I just put a mag mount on top of my truck, put a 20-meter whip on top of it, and I managed to work all around the country on 20 meters with using that. And then there is the motorized antennas, such as Tar Heels. Very popular, expensive, but they work really great. And I know that a lot of you guys may have heard about Dipoles. Spence has one. Dipoles work great, but I think you can probably have as much people hating them as much people love them. Spence, would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that they're really great for certain situations. I used mine out in the Mojave Desert when I went out to visit the kids, and I set it up there for about a week, and I took it up and down every night. Didn't have to do that after I was worried about the temperature on them, but apparently that's not a big issue there. But yeah, an antenna is a very political thing there. You have people with pros and cons of everything there, but I am interested in yours, especially your typical setup when you're out there activating.
So what Spence was saying is true. And another disadvantage maybe they're expensive. You can get a lot of other antennas for the same price as that. It's important to realize that if you guys want to go out and do parks, is you have to check the rules and regulations. Many parks have restrictions for using trees or putting stakes in the ground, especially national parks. They don't want you putting stakes in the ground in national parks. So before you go activate, just go. Every park has a list of rules, what you can do. Even here in Maryland, they don't want you damaging the trees. So we all know what it's like sometimes to throw an antenna up in a tree and it gets stuck and you start pulling on it. So you got to be very careful of that, especially stakes. One way to get around that, a lot of folks use telescoping masts to get the antenna off the ground. There's a company called Jack Kite, and there's also MFJ. Everybody makes these telescoping masts, and the most popular size is 31 feet. And anybody know why 31-foot mast is pretty popular? Come on, somebody must know why 31-foot mast is popular.
Isn't it a half wavelength of a 40-meter dipole?
No, it's a quarter wave on 40.
A quarter wave, that's it.
Yeah, and because a quarter wave is 33 feet on 40, and 40 meters is one of the most popular bands for POTA. And if you notice, there's a lot of folks who make their own, or you can buy a drive-on mast holder. You can just drive your tire onto that, and you stick your mast into that, and that supports the mast. And a lot of people who have, if you have a trailer hitch, a receiver, they make like flagpole holders. You just buy a flagpole holder that slides into the receiver, and you can put your telescoping mast inside that.
Hey, Bernie.
Yes, sir.
I bought the Super Antenna MP1 DX Max.
Yep.
Because of the portable, because when I'm up here, I have a room in an apartment, a bunch of us guys rent, and I don't have any room to put up an antenna. So that allows me to put it up quickly. It was a little bit more expensive, but it's pretty compact in the bag that it comes in when it's broken down. And I used it on the one day we had back in September, October, the big day that the ARRL had that weekend. And I was able to talk off a 818 with a was it the LDG 817 tuner and that super antenna. And I talked to somebody halfway across Canada, and like probably 30 feet from my antenna, the power lines come across into this apartment by our back deck. So there was a whole lot of noise and everything on it, but it still worked good for me. And the thing I like about it, it's easy for me to pack down, and it's transportable very easy.
Bernie, going back to what you're saying, you just made me realize something with the Dipole. I use that tripod, and it will extend up 19 feet, but it has to be guide. So that is that's where you've really taught me something there about these types of activations, because number one, you're going to be putting stakes in the ground for that guy, there's 3 guys on it. So yeah, those are important things to know. Thank you.
And not all parks have that restriction, obviously. That's where you got to check, just take a look at the rules for each park, and they'll tell you if you can put a stake in the ground or not.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I tried my first park about 2 weeks ago today, Delaware Seashore, and I used a magnetic loop antenna. I don't hear anybody talking about them. What is the pros and cons of that?
I don't have much experience with them, but I do know, I don't know how many people are on Facebook. If you hate Facebook, you don't like Facebook, but there's a really active Parks on the Air group on Facebook, and there are a lot of folks using those antennas. And
I didn't get the 10 contacts, by the way, so maybe that was part of the reason.
But we do have an expert on now. Mr. Wizard, don't go anywhere. Now, see, he walks away as soon as I say that. But going back to Steve, any antenna is better than no antenna at all. So if all you can get on is a super antenna, which are very popular, by the way, lots of guys use them for the reasons you said. They're easy to set up and easy to take on, because there's a couple of crazy people who love to hike into a park and then set up. Well, that's a whole different ball game. I'm one who's going to do out of my car, or drive up to a picnic ground and set up. When you start talking about crazy people who want to start, putting their stuff on the backpack, and, then the antenna types, the battery types, the radio types, Steve had the 818. That's a little tiny Yaesu QRP rig. Very nice rig, very tiny. But again, if you're going to be hiking around, that's what you want. You don't want to put a 7300 on your back and start carrying it. It's that, well, Mr. Wizard probably could, but I wouldn't. The cool part for me about POTA antennas is that there's no need to use normal size antenna wire. We all use number 14, sometimes 12. Most of us use 26 gauge antenna wire due to the size and the weight. Plus, it's hard to see if you're in a campground. Sometimes you want to be as stealthy as you can in the campground. Otherwise, you have a lot of people come up to you. So you got to be stealthy. And by using number 26, the wireman sells it. It's called I forget what it's called, but it's got steel wire on the inside and then copper on the outside. Steve, do you know what it's called off the top of your hand? I know the wireman makes 2 kinds. He makes it a 26 gauge and an 18 gauge.
Generally, it's copper clad. I don't know if you're thinking of something more specific.
Yeah, it's very popular. It's got a real slippery coating on the outside of it, but it's really cool stuff. So that's, again, if you're going to be one of those crazy people hiking into a park, you don't want to be making a dipole out of 14 wire, and a lot of them use RG174 instead of RG8X for the same reason. Most of the coax runs are pretty short. Most of the time they're 25 to 30 feet run. So you can get away with using RG174 at 7 megs. Again, you got to weigh the convenience factor and the weight depending on what coax you want to use. And a lot of folks are using RG, I think it's 316, which is like a souped up 174.
Yeah, I saw a video of one guy who did a lot of that with the soda stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was KG8HQD. He did a speaker wire antenna that he takes with him and just runs up a little compact fiberglass Chinese fishing pole he bought that runs it up about 15, 20 feet in the air, and he runs that up. He puts it in his backpack and takes it with him.
Well, now that's some real crazy people, the soda people. They're the ones that it's called Summits on the Air, and they're the ones who actually walk up to mountain peaks or hill peaks, and they operate. Most of it's done on, a lot of it's done on 2 meters, But there are people like Steve just said who actually do HF from there. And again, that's most of the time is QRP from the mountaintop. But yeah, that's, of course, we're lucky here in Maryland, not a whole lot of mountaintops here. Let's see, next slide. Okay, here's my favorite slide now. Hey, Spence, you were asking about my antennas. Hang on here. There you go. I have just a few.
Oh yeah, baby. I love it.
So the one that you hear a lot about is the Wolf River coil. And it's a coil that you just slide this back up and down until you get resonant. And I have a 17-foot telescoping element for it, but they also make they make a 102-inch and a 48-inch mast. But these are very popular, the Wolf River. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them out there. And it has a 3/8-inch by 24 stud. I just screw it right into my mag mount and off I go. And then for the places where I can't put antennas up, this is my Hustler mast. This is a 54-inch aluminum mast with the resonators for 40, 20, and 17 meters. 17 meters is pretty popular for parks on the air because, you know, there's just a lot less traffic on it, especially on contest weekends where you can't have contests, where you can't operate on 17 meters. Now, somebody's probably saying, what the heck is these things here? Well, they are camping clothesline holders, which had clothesline in them. And I saw this idea years ago. And what you do is you take out the clothesline and you put wire inside of it. Each one of these holds 40 feet of wire. I use that for the radials. Because I don't know about you, but it seems like every time I'm out there, everything gets all messed up and I have to sit there and try to figure out getting them back together, again, untangle them. This is one way I just put this, I put one in at the radio at the end of the antenna and I just roll it out 40 feet or whatever I need. And when I'm done with it, I just roll it back up. And bam, I've got my 3 radials. So it's not original. I didn't do it, but definitely somebody has.
Now, is that for a counterpoise radio when you're talking about those then?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for the vertical.
Okay.
For the vertical. Down here is the soda beam link dipole for 20 meters and 40 meters. And you see it's made out of, it's 26 gauge wire and there's RG 174, 25 feet of it all connected to, and it's on winders. And they also make a 3-band one for 20, 30, and 40. And here's my 25 feet of RG8X. And you can never have too much wire, so I have extra 26 gauge wire. And there's my 4-to-1 balun, my 1-to-1 balun, my 49-to-1 balun, and my PAC-10 9-to-1 balun. I know Dan has a PAC-10. PAC-10s are awesome antennas. This one here is a 9-to-1, and it's got the balun built in, and the antenna wire on here is already connected to it. And if you want to add more, you can. So they make a 9-to-1, and they make an in-fed half-wave one. I only have the 9-to-1. I've been trying to get the in-fed, and they've been sold out. They're having issues with their supplies. So everything's sold out right now from PAC-10. But once they come back, they're a great antenna for POTA. And again, that's where you, if you can't get up a real dipole, that will work. And you can never have too much line with you, by the way. Never have too much paracord with you.
Bernie, what I did with the PAC-10 is I actually bought an in-fed as well, just recently.
You're lucky.
And you have to just subscribe to their groups.io group, and so you'll see that George will announce when he's going to have stuff back in stock. And I just happened to see it the one morning as I was waking up, and I bought one real quick, and they went out of stock real quick after that.
Yep.
What group is that you're saying, Dan?
That's the PAC-10.
PAC-10.
Yeah. he has like a distribution on groups.io, much like we do for NEMARC, but he'll like make his announcements when he's getting stuff back in stock, what is going to be coming back in stock, about what time it's going to be. I had the link dipole that is a 20-meter dipole, but then you clip on the links on the ends and connect them with the banana clips, and all of a sudden it's a 40-meter dipole. And that works really, really well. I mean, I was able to talk on 20 meters, you know, across the country on my 891. And then I got the end-fed half wave then too. I haven't tried that yet. Of course, I don't have a tuner for the 891, so I'm not needed for that.
And there you go. The last piece of item that I have is my LDG tuner for my Icom. For those of you who have Icoms, this company, LDG, which is a Maryland company, by the way, they're over on the Eastern Shore. They have this tuner here plugs into the back of your Icom rig.
Yep.
If you notice, every Icom rig from 100 years ago to present has that 4-conductor Molex plug on the back. Well, that supplies 12 volts plus the antenna tuning, and these plug right into that 4-conductor port, and it gets the power from it. So all you do is hit the tune button on the tuner, hit the tune button on your 7300, and it'll automatically tune. Because we all know our 7300s, the tuners, I guess for most rigs these days, are pretty poor. I think they do 3-to-1 max.
3-to-1.
Which is great if you're closely resonant, but if you're using a 9-to-1 or a 4-to-1 antenna, you got to have more than 3-to-1, and that's where this antenna tuner comes in handy. So if you're looking for a nice, inexpensive Maryland-made tuner, check out LDG tuners. They make them for all rigs. So just not plugging them, but I've had 2 of them. They work very good, and they have, I think they're 10-to-1 tuning ratio. So they're
10-to-1. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll tune just about anything. And here's the antenna links. I can put this up on our on groups page later. But there's the Soda Beams, Pack Tenna, the Hustler antenna, the Tar Heels, Wolf River, and because I knew that Spence had buddy poles, I put the buddy pole address, and Jack Kite fiberglass poles. MFJ sells fiberglass poles. Everybody sells fiberglass poles. One thing you can't do, these are not meant to hang a heavy dipole from. The top is probably thinner than a soda straw. The top piece on it, really lightweight. So they're not meant to hold the antenna. That's why a lot of the antennas used for outdoors are made from 26 gauge wiring, and they use RG 174 coax because it's just less pull on the antenna. Believe it or not, Spence, that's it.
Well, I have some questions. That was a fantastic presentation, and I hope everybody learned as much as I did there. And I know some other folks that I know here locally will be interested in seeing this online when it's published. One thing I wanted to ask you, I had a number of questions. What's your usual operating time, and how does that relate to the amount of power you usually use and your battery situation?
Well, that's an easy question. Most parks, they open at dawn and close at dusk. Okay. So that's your operating time. And truly any time is a good time. There's always people out there listening. And POTA actually has a spotting network.
Okay.
You can spot if you go to the POTA webpage, you can self-spot yourself. And so there's always people waiting, looking to get spotted. And usually, Spence, most activations, no more than 3 hours for the most part. Because by that time, because remember, this time you're the one that's getting all the calls, so you're running a pilot from the other end. So after 3 hours, you're pretty much toast.
Okay. Well, I know that we talked about this beforehand there, but how do you get, if somebody had a local park in their area that was not, I guess they would have to go to that site and see if their park was on there. How do you go about getting a park that is not on there activated?
You send an email to POTA.
Okay.
And they have a whole crew. They have a whole crew who does nothing but validates parks.
It has to be a state park or a national park.
Yeah, state park or national park. Yeah, no county parks.
But wildlife management areas also count too, so it doesn't have to be a park like most people think about.
When you were talking about your Wolf River coils, and you're talking about the vertical part, 17 feet is a long vertical there. What's been your experience with breeze/wind with some of those situations?
You got to be careful with them because they break. They will break. I mean, it's just little stainless steel, and use it. The only time I've ever extended it 2 times because 17 feet is almost a quarter wave for 20 meters. So it works really good on 20 meters for quarter wave. But also, if you want to get down on 80 meters, you just about have to have the 17-foot whip.
Yeah.
You just have to watch the weather forecast because they will. I mean, I've had mine blow over once. Luckily, no damage. Knock on wood. But that's why the company makes 2 different sizes. They make 2 other sizes of whips. They make, I think they make a 102-inch whip, and I think they make a 72-inch whip or something like that. For that reason, because you don't need the really tall whip if you're going to operate 20 and above.
Well, now, when you were also talking about how you operate usually 3 hours or something like that, are you also ever operating at night as well? I guess what I'm trying to get at is if somebody was wanting to get into this that hasn't done it before, what would they, and let's say they were going to use a Wolf River coil. What kind of money would they have in that? What size battery should they be looking at from your experience?
Well, number one, you're not going to be able to operate from a park at night unless you're camping. That's not the only way you can operate from a park at night is if you're camping, because most other parks close at sunset.
Okay.
So if you're camping, then you don't have to worry about battery size because more than likely you're going to have campground with electric.
Right.
But when I put that chart up earlier, it shows you essentially this is how long you can get at 100 watts. Now, one thing you can do is don't run 100 watts, run 90 watts, run 80 watts. That's enough. I mean, I just purchased.
Well, when I was running mine, Spence, and I talked to the guy in Canada, I was using an internal battery, which meant it was running at 2.5 watts.
That's right.
Wow.
You know, I know Don doesn't think it's going to happen, but the sun will come back.
Yeah.
The sun will come back. And when the sun comes back, we won't have to worry about running 100 watts from a park. You're going to be able to get by with a lot less and have much more fun from the parks. So Spence, really, well, most of it's going to be, and again, it depends on the radio. Are you going to operate 100 watts? Are you going to operate 10 watts? I mean, that's directly relative to how big a battery you have. My 30 amp hour battery now, that's going to last me almost all day at 100 watts.
At 100 watts. Yeah. Okay, Dawn, let's open it up for some questions. Go ahead, Dawn.
I'm going to take just a slightly different direction to my questions, and I actually have answered some of my own questions while I've been looking here because so there's 2 aspects to parks on the air. There's being an activator where you go to a park and you throw out your call and you submit your logs. Right. And I know that quite often using N3FJP, I'll see people who are spotted as parks on the air, and I often take the time to make a contact with them And I thought that I actually had to upload my log somehow to Parks on the Air, but I'm looking here. I can see activations that I've had listed here. I did sign up for an account on Parks on the Air, and my activations with people who are calling are just showing up here. We don't have a lot, so that's kind of nice, actually.
If you're a hunter, I mean, if you're an activator, you're required to submit your log to Parks on the Air, but not the other way around. And if you're in the log, it'll show up on the Parks on the Air website.
Oh, what is the matter with you?
I posted the link. It's just POTA.us for their spotting network. And I haven't had the chance to go out and activate a lot of parks, but sometimes when I'm bored, I'll go to the spotting network and I'll see who's out there spotting, and I'll just kind of listen to them on the radio as they're running their pileups and working through it. So to me, that was kind of a good introduction for it, to hear how it's going and what's going on with it.
Hey, Spence, I need to head upstairs for a minute. Can you
Sure.
can you run it for a minute?
Sure. I know that other people probably have some questions. So before they get out of somebody's mind there, if we want to ask them, I'll write them down here. And so when
I don't know.
Bernie's there.
Really don't know.
Hey, Bill, can you mute your microphone? We can hear your conversations there. Do we have any other questions there? Let me ask this. Has anybody else done some activations with Park on the Air? Stephen, did you do any?
I've attempted 2 in the past, but I never had enough contacts for a successful activation, which is, I'm sure Bernie already explained it before I came in. You need at least 10 contacts to do an activation. So I've never have been able to achieve that. So
that is a minimum. You have to do 10 for it to count as an activation.
That's correct.
Okay.
You know, this is just, I know that Chris AK3B does Parks on the Air, and he actually has a HF radio in his car, and he just went to the Hampton Mansion in Towson there, and he did activations from the park there. So there's at least a couple of guys in the clubs who have been have been at least somewhat active on parks.
Now I'm going to also assume that Parks on the Air, or POTA, has their own award system and certificates and things like that. Is that correct, Stephen? Okay. Okay, are there any other questions there until Bernie gets back?
I was going to say, Spence, they do have their own different awards, and they have various awards. Some of them are by states, and if you activate all the parks in a state, or if you activate a park 100 times, or if you activate the same park 1,000 times, they've got so many different award certificates you can get. It's kind of crazy.
Now, what, Steve, with your experience there, how hard is it to get your 10 contacts there to activate the park, and what's been your experience with your activations?
I haven't been able to get out to the park to activate yet, but I've listened to a bunch of them on the radio and watched a bunch of different YouTube videos they do. And for a lot of them, once they got in the spotting network and people find out they're there, they get huge pileups. They're spending half an hour trying to work a pileup to get it cleared, because they have so many people that are hunting the activators, because the hunters can also get certificates.
Okay.
In awards.
That makes sense.
So you have a lot of people that sit at their in their shacks and hunt from there and hunt the people down.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I was really interested. There's Bernie back. Bernie, from an antenna standpoint, do you have any empirical data as far as is a T-top dipole versus an inverted V versus a vertical? Is any one particular antenna more of a go-to antenna for some of these types of things?
Most of it depends on where you're at in the park, where you can set up. that determines. I can tell you a lot of them use the use the fiberglass mast, and then they hang an inverted V dipole off of it, or they use it as a straight vertical. Because a lot of the parks don't have, you know, if you're in a parking lot, for example, I'm not going to find a whole lot of trees in a parking lot. So
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, that's where the, you know, worst case is, and a lot of them use the, you know, a hustler type hand stick with the mag mount on top of the car, and that works, especially on 20 meters.
How about RFI? Have you ever experienced anything? I was just thinking at night in a park with everybody running a bug zapper, whether or not that drives somebody crazy.
Yeah, when I was camping, some of the parks got pretty noisy at night.
Yeah.
I felt like I was back home again.
Yeah. Is there any relationship between Parks on the Air and Summits on the Air, or are those two completely separate entities with no relationship?
No relationship. They're. I mean, they do the same things, but in a much different way, of course. You know, some crazy people are climbing up mountains, and some aren't. But no, two different organizations.
Any other questions?
Is there any, I know Bernie, you've talked about getting out this summer and doing some parks on the air. Is it done kind of as a group activity sometimes, or is it a solo activity generally?
Most of it is solo. But every so often, you know, a couple guys will get together and go out and activate a park.
You know, one of the things too, I'm sure that some people will ask, obviously with these batteries, and that is also going to be a function of not only amp hours, but dollars in the bank account.
Right.
Is there any kind of a standard dollars per amp hour cost to some of these batteries that you're talking about, like some of these LiPos?
I don't know.
Because I know I can't remember off the top of my head what they cost, but I know that they weren't inexpensive.
No, I think my battery that I just got off of Amazon was less than $150 for a 30 amp hour.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go with the blue ones, the Bieno, they're almost twice as much.
And I wonder why that is.
I just bought a 40 amp hour battery had a company, Impulse. They did an article in QSL magazine, and they put it in a box for you, and it costs about $500, as I recall, 40 amp hours. But it has a built-in charger and all that kind of stuff too, and connectors on the box, and a watertight box.
Now, Bernie, the type that you have, did you say you had to buy a charger for it, or does it come with a charger?
I had to buy a charger with it.
Okay.
I had to buy one separate. And again, I don't, you know, a lot of people don't like Facebook, I know, but there is the POTA website, the POTA page on Facebook is very good. You know, all the activators are on it. You know, they all talk about what kind of equipment they use. They talk about batteries. I mean, that's how I found about this battery on Amazon. Activators were saying, hey, Amazon has this, and I've used this battery for X amount of times, and it's working great. So, and there's also a Wolf River Coils group on Facebook, which is full of information on how they're doing out in the field and stuff with them. So there's lots of information.
Hey, Bernie, how much did that 30 ampere hour battery weigh, did you say?
7 pounds.
That's good.
Oh.
Not that I'm planning on hiking around or not, but still, it's nice. Because I mean, when I did my activations in 2016, I had a deep cycle, you know, marine battery, and yeah, it stayed in the truck all the time because it was just too heavy to walk around with that sucker.
Yeah, they are heavy. You can get a deep cycle like an 80 or 90 ampere hour at Walmart for like $80-$90.
Oh, right.
About $1 an amp hour.
Yeah. especially if you have a coil, like a core, you just give them a core. Usually I mean, people up front, they don't care.
Yeah.
You just give them a core, give them an old car battery or something. They'll take it. That way, don't charge you the core costs. But
I'll take lawnmower batteries too.
Really? Yeah.
Tractor batteries, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, the advantage of the Life Pro, of course, you know, was in that slide. You know, you can use them almost down to 20%, and they're still going to give you the good voltage. Whereas a deep cycle battery, you know, after about 50% usage, the batteries start, and some radios start getting unhappy when they start getting a little bit below 12 volts, because these Life Pro batteries start out at just over 13 volts.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the charger output, I think, is 14.5 volts.
I would say for someone starting, and if they're gonna just stay in their car, just get a deep cycle, because it's cheaper, and you just keep it in your car, and you can get like a deep cycle that's like 40 or 50 ampere hours. That'll last you all day. In fact, you can make it last all weekend if you wanted.
But the key to that is not to let it discharge quite as much then, because that's when the radio doesn't like it then.
Yeah, and also the battery doesn't like getting discharged. If you go much below, you know, some batteries below 50%, then, you know, you weaken the time that the battery will last a lifetime.
I said it more applies to when deep cycles, that it more applies to probably about 25% and lower. You can take a deep cycle down to about 25%, you'd be fine. I mean, I do it all the time with my marine batteries. Yeah, and my trolling motor is a 12 volt, but it's a 55-pound trolling motor, so it pulls a lot of current. It doesn't pull quite as much as a full duty cycle, you know, HF carrier or something, but I bet you it pulls probably, I would guess it's at least pulling 15 amps. But,
so that also brings up a point you made there, Dan. Bernie, I would assume that if you're going to activate a park, you're going to want to be on the air and not something like FT8, RTTY, anything that's 100% duty cycle, correct?
Well, actually, FT8, you can now use that on parks on the air.
Okay.
Can you really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's only 50% duty cycle.
Within the past year, maybe 2 years, they've started using FT8 for parks on the air. Maybe shorter, maybe longer. I'm not sure exact time, but they have.
Very good.
I'm looking through my log here. I have one in RTTY. I don't know if that was during one of the contests or something.
Yeah.
I got a question for you, Bernie.
Okay.
With these, so I have one of those, like, what do you call those, like crappy poles, you know, those fiberglass extendable crappy poles, you know, I can get it up like, I think it's like 21 feet or something like that, or 25 feet. I forget how much it is. But the very top section, or the very top two sections, they're really flimsy and they can't handle a lot of weight. And sometimes these things will bend over and then, you know, pop in or snap in or whatever. I have the military mass fiberglass poles, you know what I mean? But I wanted to get like a standoff, or I may have to fabricate something to kind of stand it off and dangle the center feed point away from the fiberglass mass, because fiberglass will actually desensitize it. If you put her up against it, it will desensitize
yes, it will.
Antenna.
Well, you know,
so
the key to your crappy pole is to use the 26 gauge wiring and RG 174 coax, and not cut on the weight. Especially the coax. The RG8X will kill you. It's so heavy.
Well, that's what, and I have like an 8X type. I have the LMR. I think it's like 240 or something like that, which is hopped up 8X. Where would you suggest to get something like a 174 or a 316 assembly that you can have made? Because I didn't see DX Engineering had anything like that. Is there
Pac-10 sells it.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Oh, good to know.
Sell a 316.
Does anybody else sell like assemblies of already terminated 316?
I actually did a Google search, and there are companies out there making 174 with connectors on it.
Yeah. What do you know what the name of the one? It's an Italian company that make coax. It's like something in Poloni or something like that. guys recommend? I saw them at Hamvention. And that's a nice coax. I bet you they have it, but I can't think of the name off the top of my head. All right, I'm not stealing the mic anymore. Go ahead.
So what kind of activations have you done then? The ones that you've done, Bernie, have been, what's your typical setup? I mean, you have very much real estate to use, or you?
No, both of my activations in 2016 were in parking lots.
Okay.
So that's why I used a mag mount with the Hustler mast and resonator on it. Because there you can sit in your car, nobody knows what you're doing. It looks like a big CB antenna on top of the car.
You draw much attention, you say?
You know, I did in the campgrounds when I was camping. People would come up to me because stupid me didn't use headphones. So they hear the out of the radio and they want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I was, I told them I'm a ham operator. Twice during one trip, I actually had 2 hams come up to me. In one ham, we were in New Hampshire, and there was a ham who had his buddy pole set up with a big tripod and the buddy pole dipole in his campsite set up.
That's really cool.
So it's fun. And, you don't, like Dan said, you don't need to spend a lot of money. If you already have a radio, which we all do here, throw up a dipole, 20 meters and 40 meters are your go-to frequencies. And if you're one of those CW freaks, 30 meters is very popular for POTA. So, but really it's 40 and 20. 40s for the close-in guys, and then 20s to go across the country.
One thing that I wanted, before we get out of here, I want to touch base on there. You mentioned, and I know that on Discord, I saw that here a while back, where the N3FJP software could be adapted, I guess, somehow for Parks on the Air, Summits on the Air. Is that hard to do? Is that a permanent, semi-permanent, or just a temporary thing, or do you just leave it set up that way?
Well, what I did is if you go to Scott's website, he has a link to the YouTube video on how to reconfigure. And I have a laptop that I use for that. So that laptop is configured that way, but it's really simple. You can drag, you can add new windows because Parks on the Air require certain fields, certain of the ADIF files, they require certain fields. And so when you go in Scott's software, you modify it and you type in these new fields that's required. But it's really simple to do. And actually on the last update, didn't Scott say his new software now you can save different configurations? You can save one for POTA, you can save one for normal AC log and so on.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a great YouTube site that Scott has, and you go right to his site and yes, dear.
Don, one thing I was going to ask you, because you had mentioned it, that is it in LOTW or is it in Scott software that you get that information that was a Park on the Air, or was that just from Parks on the Air website?
No, what happens is sometimes when people post spots to a spotting network and they can put a note in the spot, they'll often put a note if somebody's on Parks on the Air and what park it is that's being activated. So, this has been educational for me actually to just go and look. I think now that I know that I don't even on my end as a hunter, I like that word as a hunter, that I don't even have to do anything except make the contact and provide him with the activator with my information.
Correct.
And I get credit for it. I'm going to do it more.
Mm-hmm.
It's so. I think that answered your question, Spencer.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a hunter, you don't have to do anything except make the cue, and that's it.
Sometimes, in my experience when I'm hunting, sometimes it's a pile up and you have to work for it, and sometimes the guy is looking for contacts.
Now, Don, did you did you change your AC log around for parks on the air, or are you just using different fields like a comment?
As a hunter, you don't need to do that.
Okay.
I would say that it's not even required to record what park you've activated.
No, I think
It's
the only
easy.
Now, what I did
the
for
only
my,
thing you have to do is register on the POTA website
right,
with your call
Yeah.
sign. And then when the activators send in their logs, you'll get credit because you activated them. I
Okay.
think you just have to have your account set up on the POTA website.
Now, I'm learning on the air with you guys. I think that's something that probably won't affect many people but has affected me with Parks on the Air is I changed my call sign. So I had registered as NT3U and I used to be KC30L. So I don't know if it's going to go back retroactively and find some of the hunting that I've done and give credit to the activators or not, but I just updated my call sign in the Parks on the Air website.
and guys, there's a great, if you go to pota.app, POTA.app, APP, it's just strictly for spotting. It's really cool.
Now you put that app on your laptop then,
No.
or?
Just type it in for a web address,
Okay.
POTA.app.
Either that or POTA.us takes you to the Spotters Network too.
That's it. Okay.
But I'm looking at the POTA.app one now. It actually has a little bit more information where you can click around different bands,
Right.
modes.
Yeah, it has a great sort feature on it. So if you're not interested in CW like me, you can just tap on the SSB and all you'll see is single sideband spots.
Okay. Almost like DX Heat does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the cool one. I found out about that a couple months ago, I guess.
Yeah, but those are just the spotting apps. You actually have to go to parksontheair.com, which is where you register with them, and they have all their rules and how to do it and all of that is on parksontheair.com.
I mean, and the cool part for me is that, I did, a lot of hunting during the 2016 event, and I thought those were all lost. Well, when I logged into the POTA site, all of a sudden, all my activations, all of my hunting from 2016 were there. So I ended up with 150 parks already hunted as soon as I logged in, because they must have taken all this stuff from the 2016 and ported them over to over to Parks on the Air. So that's pretty cool. So I'm up, I've already got my certificate for 100 parks hunted already without even breaking a sweat, because I did so much of it in 2016.
So the short of it is that all of us should probably get a free account on the POTA site there, and that way we can hunt and we can also activate once we get set up for that. But now on that site, if you're, let's say on a weekend, you're sitting in the shack, you're there in the morning, you're drinking a cup of coffee before you get crazy with the day, and you wanted to see if there was any parks on the air that you could work while you're having your cup of coffee, do you go to a specific spotting site for that?
POTA has a spotting site right there.
Okay.
I to add to what it is, if you go to the POTA and you log in as yourself, they actually have a links to the spotting site, Parks US. Now I don't remember, POTA US.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a link to that directly on their website. POTA US.
So I'm assuming if you are an activator, you may have to do a little bit of legwork on the computer before you go to say, I'm going to be in such and such a place at such and such a time, I'm assuming.
Yeah, a lot of folks do put down on the POTA site, I'm going to activate such and such park today. And if they have cell phone service, then they'll spot themselves.
Okay.
is allowed to spot yourself.
That's cool. Now, is there an app for that on the cell phone?
Yeah, that the POTA.app will do that. You can spot from the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, through the web page.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, and like Don's been saying, if all you got to do is hunt, you don't need to do anything, because the activators are required. Even if you need 10 contacts for it to be a valid activation.
Right.
But even if you don't get 10, you still have to send in your log for that park, because the hunters are going to want that.
Right. So, one of the things too, I think that this also indicates is, not everybody, at least starting out, is going to necessarily get into contesting, but this is kind of a contest in and of itself, a really laid back type of operation that would be fun. Even if you don't have a big setup in your own ham shack at this time, that this is something that you could get involved with, that kind of gives you that little bit of a contest bug too.
Yeah, I mean, look at this right now. I have a Parks on the Air with Aiken Gopher Tortoise Heritage Preserve Wildlife Management Area. How many people can say that they've activated a tortoise management area? There's some pretty cool. There's some pretty cool name. The PD River State Game Land.
Yep.
Well, I got my vanity call sign, and now it says I activated a park before I was even a licensed ham. Said I activated or I didn't activate. I was a hunter for a park in New Hampshire back in 2018.
So wildlife management areas can be activated. That's really cool, because we've got a lot of those around here in West Virginia too. So that would be a nice place to go.
And again, you can go to the POTA site and put in West Virginia, and then
West by God, Virginia.
You'll just list all the areas that are eligible.
That's right. Okay, that's great. Any other questions?
You could go to Harper's Ferry. I mean, that's a valid national park.
Yeah. Any other questions for Bernie while we have him? Well, folks, it's been another great NEMARC evening here. We appreciate everybody showing up for it, and I think we've learned something a lot of us were interested in and got that information. Bernie, you did a great job on your presentation. This video will be put on the website and the on YouTube as well. Share it with other clubs that you're involved with there. I'm sure they would be interested in doing that as well. And go ahead.
We have a brand new ham here with us who is antenna challenged. Rosalie.
Yeah.
If you're antenna challenged and you're in an apartment, POTA is a great way to get out into a park and get in the air. And I'm sure there's, she's way down there near Tom, way down there on the other side of Maryland, but I'm sure there's parks down there in that area. So, I mean, that's something she can do.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in an apartment, you want to get out and play on the radio in a park.
Absolutely.
I noticed there are lots of wildlife management areas around here.
Of course, because you're south of Baltimore, right?
Oh yeah, just south of Baltimore. I think I'm wedged between like 3 or 4 different research areas too.
And you're close to Tom, right? Unfortunately for you.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We encourage you to do that, Rosalie. We really do, because the fun part of being a ham is there are just so many different facets and niches that you can enjoy as a ham here. And before it's all over with, after 10, 20, 30, 40 years of being a ham, you're going to have experienced a lot of the different niches of the hobby. And this is a great one there. Whether you're a young ham or an old ham, this really interests me now, especially with the Dipole. So we will definitely try that here in the future.
And again, I'm thinking that as soon as we get a little warmer weather, we can plan something at a park near you or someplace, and we can just go out and have fun and operate for 3 or 4 hours. And I know there's Chris AK3B is a big Park on the Air person. So there's already 3 or 4 of us who are, and I know Dan wants to get out with his. Unfortunately, he has a Yaesu, but I guess it'll work out there in the park.
I don't know. Is that a NEMARC infraction?
But I know Dan's also said, and he's got a big state park out near him. What's the name of it? Not Covis. Anyway, it's a big park out near Dan. A big.
Fedoris?
Fedoris?
Yeah, I go fishing there all the time.
A
You guys
really
should go out in the middle of the lake.
There you go. You could drag a counterpoise like they used to do on the ships behind you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and Dan says he wants to get out there, and I threaten that I'll come join him, and we'll activate together out there at the park. So
I wonder how an NFED like just pointed straight up in the air would do.
works fine.
Yeah, I could do that with the crappy pole. Just drape it over top and just have it sticking up in the air.
So for all of those folks out here who aren't fishermen, a crappy pole isn't a crappy pole for the mortals who don't fish. It's a fishing pole.
It's a fishing pole, but there's a panfish called a crappie.
That's right.
And that's why they call them crappies.
Right. And they're fun to catch.
And they're very, very good. You fry them up.
Or a crappie if you don't want to say crappie.
There you go.
You know, for people who are challenged, like in apartments, and On the Air magazine this past month's issue, they had those copper tape antennas that you put on the window.
I saw that.
Really, really good way to get on the air in a space-constrained location.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That would be.
I've never played with it, but I've also seen those antennas. They're basically verticals, but they clip on the windowsill and they just stick right out of the windowsill, and they go kind of 45
like half
angle.
a V.
Yeah, exactly. I bet you this will work pretty well because it gets you outside of the constraints of the walls of your place, which is probably a big issue.
That would be good for me because they use that aluminum siding in my building, so anything inside is just completely right.
You're like inside of a Faraday cage.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that, and with aluminum siding, if you got it outside, you might have a nice reflector there too.
Yeah.
Probably got that low E glass too that likes to block all the RF.
That sounds so painful.
Okay, well, Bernie, again, thank you so much.
Welcome.
There, you'll know to stop this video so we don't see the rest of your shack for the rest of the night when we're done here. But again, we appreciate everybody being here. Keep an eye on Discord. Keep an eye on our IO groups. Email reflector there for our next Elmer's group here, the Fireside chat. It's always good having everybody with us. And with that, Bernie, I'll let you put a bow on it and shut her down.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for being here. And again, I think come this summer, as it gets a little warmer, maybe we'll have a couple of NEMARC get-togethers and go out and activate a park. And even with a Yaesu, I think we'll do it, because I know Dan wants to get out with his 891 something or other, whatever he
Well, we got to get Bernie to get a 705 so we can all play with it.
No, I've got.
Hey, I love
That is the best idea of the night.
Yeah, there you go.
I have.
What is that? Is that a 10-tech?
No, it's a Chinese radio. It says
Zygo.
Zygo G90.
You guys ever seen those 10-techs? They used to have those scouts.
Yeah.
Where they have like they used to put, you have like little modules. You literally pop them in like almost like a cassette.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that radio there is 10 through 160 and it's 20 watts. So it's not really a QRP, 20 watts.
How's the receive on that thing?
Really good.
It has a built-in tuner too, doesn't it?
Yep, built-in tuner.
Cool.
And it's like 8-to-1 tuner. So, and do you know what I learned, Spence? I'll leave with this: that 20 watts versus 100 watts is only one S unit different.
Yep, that's right.
So sometimes, oh my God, 20 watts, but no, one S unit different. That's not too bad.
No, not at all.
So I'm gonna try that this this summer. All right, with that, thanks everybody. I want to shut down here and go take care of my.
Thank you very much, Bernie. It was awesome.
All right, you're all welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie.
See y'all
Thank you.
later.